Dumban, Jumdende, Dijin Sheban, Dajomba, Yandaban, Zobe, Sanji, Rigbadan, Shabzo, Demba, Devara Sheban, Jidin, Jimbanjo. Kalun Juva, Lana, Meba, Lada, Menam, Je, Dumba, Sangi, Jumdende, Benjava, Shajan, Duba, Lajan. Chudu Yazun Je, Demba, Jumdende, Dijin Sheban, Dajomba, Yandaban, Zobe, Sanji, Rigbadan, Shabzo, Demba, Deva. Diun Dube, Kalu, Juva, Lana, Meba, Lada, Minam, Je, Demba, Sanji, Jumdende, Bejava, Shaja, Duba, Lachan. Chudu Yabzo Je, Demba, Jumdende, Dijin Sheba, Dajomba, Yandaba, Zobe, Sanji, Rigbadan, Shabzo. Jidin Chemban, Jiun, Dube, Kalun, Juva, Lana, Hada, Minam, Je, Demba, Sanji, Jumdende, Bejava, Shajado. Chudu Yazun Je, Kanze Ganye, Zo, Jedam, Je, Sajin, De La, Gomban, Dimbane, Ngani, Jidin, Dinan, Choje, Dizi, Geban, Jula, Janze, Zelo, Namda, Gonga, Chudu, Susanwa, Yishin, Yazo, Seje, Lambon, Chaban, Jidin, Sona, Lambewa, Gombo, Chunin, Chula, Janze, Senjon Dembe, Timen Davishin, Sendon Jawan Jula Chanze, Dudra Jada Zeba Zomaje, Nyamin Jijin Jula Chanze, Gombo Toje Chendemba, Tamje Jembe Demba, Suna Yundin Yazo Shin, Dishin Shela Chanze, Tabe De Chan Dewanjo, Geve Ngeson Le. Dendon Jojomba, Shijuru Chela, Chan, Zelon, Trone, Trove, Lamyade, Laba, Dala, Rabdon, Shingi, Damba, Yendende, Genden, Layan, Chan, Zelon, Digwa, Chia, Meja, She, Gewa, Puson, Sobaraj. Rangi semne yonzon de dine sanje demba ye kama rabri mame dan yuma seba jebo milan loda tinda bo dije jenan dedra da senam di tamje sekba ni koban tomne genje da Nadan Jibin Labdun de Sibi Solin Jovan Jova Jo.
The recollecting the three jewels, that sutra. Do you have the one over here? Yeah. In the language of India, Arya, Ratnatraya Nusmriti Sutra. Homage, can you all read in English? Homage to the Omniscient One. Thus the Buddha, the transcendent, accomplished conqueror, the Tathagata, who has attained suchness, the Arhat, who has conquered all foes, is a perfectly and completely enlightened Buddha, endowed with insight and worthy of reverence. The Sugata, who has reached the state of bliss, the knower of the entire world, the guide and tamer of beings, the unsurpassable one, the teacher of gods and humans, the Buddha Bhagavat, the Tathagata is in harmony with all merit. He does not waste the sources of virtue. He is fully adorned with patience. He is the foundation of the treasures of merit. He is ornamented with the excellent minor marks. He is the full blossoming of the major marks. His activity is timely and fitting. Seeing him, there is nothing displeasing. He brings true joy to those who have faith. His insight overwhelms all in its splendor. His powers are invincible. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of all the bodhisattvas. He is the sovereign of all the noble ones. He is the guide who leads beings to the city of nirvana. He has measureless wisdom. He possesses inconceivable fearlessness. His speech is utterly pure. Its tones are melodious. One can never have enough of looking at him. His form is without comparison. He is unsullied by the realm of desire. He is quite unsullied by the realm of form. He is not caught up in the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is totally liberated from the aggregates. He is not possessed with the constituents of ordinary experience. He is in control of the self-fields. He has cut through the knots. He is completely liberated from torment. He is freed from craving. He has crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of all the Buddhas of past, present, and future. He does not dwell in nirvana. He abides perfectly in finality. He remains on the level where he sees all sentient beings. All these are the authentic and supreme qualities of the embodiment of the Buddha. The sacred Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. It is excellent in meaning, excellent in words and syllables. It is distinctive, it is totally complete. It is utterly pure, it completely purifies. The Buddha teaches the Dharma perfectly. It brings unerring vision. It is without affliction. It is constant and always timely. It is trustworthy when applied. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It can validate it through their own awareness. The Dharma taught by the Buddha relies entirely on training the mind. It is truly delivering. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is all-embracing. It is constant. It is the cessation of all uncertainty. As for the Sangha of the great vehicle, they enter thoroughly, they enter with awareness, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously. They are worthy of veneration with palms joined together. They are worthy of receiving prostrations. They are a glorious field of merit. Offering to them brings great purification. They are an object of generosity. They are in every way the greatest object of generosity. And then there was the noble stack of auspiciousness. Noble stack of auspiciousness, a Mahayana Sutra. In Sanskrit, Arya Mangala Kutta Nama Mahayana Sutra. Homage, do you all have it? Homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus I have heard, at one time the Bhagavan was on a supreme mountain in the stack of auspiciousness palace, dwelling in the grove of flowers, under a canopy of stacked vajras, upon a throne of piled jewels, upon a seat of lotus filaments, accompanied by a vast auspicious entourage, circled by 1,008 bodhisattvas, great bodhisattvas, who included the Bodhisattva Mangalavara, Bodhisattva Mangala Samgraha, Bodhisattva Mangala Lamkara, Bodhisattva Mangala Avaloka, Bodhisattva Mangala Sarva Vyapin, the auspicious Bodhisattva Akasha Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Kshiti Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Vayu Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Agni Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Jala Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Asmar Garbha, the auspicious Bodhisattva Ratna Garbha, and the auspicious Bodhisattva Ananta Vyuha. Likewise, Vipashin, Uttaramati, Amitabha, Amitayus, Buddha Kashyapa, auspicious Satsvavaketu, the auspicious and powerful Vajrapani, the auspicious and wise Manjushri, the auspicious and compassionate Avalokiteshvara, Shariputra, Subhuti, and so on, an auspicious entourage 1,008 in number. Also gods, nagas, yakshas, gandharvas, kusumandas, spirits, and a large crowd of humans and non-humans all gathered together. Then at that time the youthful Manjushri rose from his seat and circumambulated the Bhagavan many times. He placed his right knee on the ground and said this to the Bhagavan. Bhagavan, at this time with such an auspicious entourage gathered, I beseech you to teach a sutra that is auspicious and virtuous in the beginning, auspicious and virtuous in the middle, auspicious and virtuous at the end, one that will remove all that is inauspicious, that will gather all that is auspicious, that will dispel all faults and errors, and gather all excellent qualities, and that will bring about splendor and good fortune. The Bhagavan smiled and spoke. Manjushri and others of this auspicious entourage, listen. In the past on this mighty earth, when the lifespan of a man was 1,000 years long, with the body of a Brahmin, I listened to this particular Mahayana Sutra, stack of auspiciousness, with its 1,000 excellent qualities, in the presence of the perfectly enlightened Buddha Sarva Mangalam Sarva Shri Tejas. I remembered it, recited it, and taught it. Through the power of good and bad, many signs of inauspiciousness occur in this world, such as bad times, bad births, inauspicious months, inauspicious years, and so forth. Faults in actions and deeds, in eating, in making clothes, faults in building houses, in finding friends, in keeping wealth, in raising horses and cattle, problems of illness, of death, in traveling, problems in carrying out the dead, in preparing the funeral site, and so forth. This Mahayana Sutra, stack of auspiciousness, dispels ill auspiciousness. It gathers all that is auspicious, dispels all faults and problems, gathers all excellent qualities, making all glorious and fortunate, renders everything good in the middle, beginning, middle, and end. It gathers all merit, causing all that is auspicious to appear and to be known, making all exalted and free from any wrong deeds and obstruction. This I will teach you. By listening to it or writing it down, by merely reciting it, all inauspiciousness will be banished. All bad prophecies, bad omens and dreams, bad mirror divination, bad omens will be dispelled. In order to bring benefit, doctors, and happiness to all living beings, I will teach the sutra to you. Listen well, keep it in your mind. To this Manjushri replied, Excellent, excellent, Bhagavan. In order to turn away all inauspiciousness for all living beings, teach us this dharma, the stack of auspiciousness sutra, supreme gatherer of all excellent qualities. The Bhagavan spoke, Manjushri and all others of this auspicious entourage, by the power of increase and decrease in karma and merit, the auspicious and inauspiciousness will appear. Among the ranks of sentient beings, sign of inauspiciousness include defects in reading, defects in writing, defects in teaching, defects in meditation, dying at birth, blindness, having mottled skin, cracked and dead skin like a cow's neck, being born with a hare lip, orphaned, a back hunched and bent, the 6-eye sitting disease, marks on face and hands, goiters, birthmarks, mishapen heads, warts, missing or extra limbs. These are the defects of inauspiciousness. Similarly, among cattle, house, dogs, farms, wealth and possessions, many defects appear. To remove and transform all these bad omens and signs. Sadyata yadhe dana bhijne ugagi swasti krapti umukhi prasavarda swasti brum brum prahaske mune gurune akhe mukare amati gurunaya swasti gule mune keshe churana bhiramale swaha. Let the auspiciousness of paying homage, going for refuge, and making requests to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha appear. May all outer, inner, and secret auspiciousness come and appear in this place. The outer auspiciousness of space of the pure skies, the inner auspiciousness of the valley of the pure mind, the secret auspiciousness of pure Dharmata realm. Whatever auspiciousness there is of space, mind, and Dharmata realm, let it appear here now. In the sky, the auspiciousness sun and moon surrounded by the host of stars. On earth, the 5 auspicious elements surrounded by fire, water, earth, and air. In between, the auspicious 3 jewels surrounded by Buddhas of the 10 directions. Whatever auspiciousness there is of the 3 jewels, may the auspiciousness appear here now. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Whatever auspiciousness there is of the sky, the earth, and in between, let it appear here now. In the center, the auspicious ultimate deity Vairochana. Whatever auspiciousness there is of Vairochana, let that auspiciousness appear here now. In the east, the auspicious deity Vajrasattva. Whatever auspiciousness there is of Vajrasattva, let that auspiciousness appear here now. In the south, the auspicious ultimate deity Ratnasambhava. Whatever auspiciousness there is of Ratnasambhava, let that auspiciousness appear here now. In the west, the auspicious ultimate deity Amitabha. Whatever auspiciousness there is of Amitabha, let that auspiciousness appear here now. In the north, the auspicious ultimate deity Amoga Siddhi. Whatever auspiciousness there is of Amoga Siddhi, let that auspiciousness appear here now. Om Bhutaya Dhu, Om Vajraya Dhu, Om Ratnaya Dhu, Om Padmaya Dhu, Om Karmaya Dhu. I and fortunate sons of the family, sponsors and patrons of these days, having been blessed by the Buddhas, this sutra of supreme auspiciousness has been spoken by me, and by that great merit, let there be all wished for auspiciousness, as all-pervading as space itself, as illuminating as the sun and the moon, as many in number as the hosts of stars, as spontaneous as the foaming clouds, as beautiful and attractive as a rainbow, as firm and glorious as Meru, as productive as the earth itself, as deep as an ocean, as blossoming as a tree in bloom, as if coming from the precious will-fulfilling jewel, let it fall like rain. Om Ahum Ratna Brum Ni A. May all become auspicious. The perfection of giving but not apprehending, whatever auspiciousness there is in great giving, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of morality without impurity, whatever auspiciousness there is of great morality, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of patience without sensation, whatever auspiciousness there is of great patience, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of perseverance without laziness, whatever auspiciousness there is of the great perseverance, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of concentration without change, whatever auspiciousness there is of great concentration, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of method without anything to negate, whatever auspiciousness there is of the supreme method, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of power without obstruction, whatever auspiciousness there is of great power, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of prayer without hopes or fear, whatever auspiciousness there is of great prayer, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The perfection of wisdom without error, whatever auspiciousness there is of great wisdom, let that auspiciousness appear here now. Whatever auspiciousness there is of the 10 perfections, let that auspiciousness appear here now. Let that all is good be swiftly gained. Om Swasti Tathayatha Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhi Swaha. The precious wheel unimpeded, whatever auspiciousness there is of the precious wheel, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The preciousness elephant with the power of the great vehicle, whatever auspiciousness there is of the precious elephant, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The precious horse with the power of knowing all, whatever auspiciousness there is of the precious horse, let that auspiciousness appear here now. The minister who controls all, whatever auspicious there is of the great minister, let that auspiciousness appear here now. Let that auspiciousness appear here now. The precious queen, creator of all, whatever auspiciousness there is of the precious queen, let that auspiciousness appear here now. May we receive all that is good right now. The precious jewel fulfilling all hopes and wishes, whatever auspiciousness there is of the precious jewel, let that auspiciousness appear here now. Om Bheshiti Ratna Bheshiti Samudda Gati Se Swaha. Om Varya Sule Brahma Karmache. Sumarachilda Swaha. Namo. For the head of the Buddha, the protective auspicious parasol. For his body, the auspicious forever flying victory banner. For his speech, the auspicious clockwise conch. For his mind, the auspicious translucent glorious mark. For his eyes, the auspicious precious golden fish. For his tongue, the auspicious lotus in full bloom. For his throat, the auspicious vase. For his hands, the auspicious jewel of excellent qualities. For his feet, the auspicious 5 wheels of enlightened activity. The 8 auspicious substances, phenomena of siddhi. Whatever auspiciousness there is of the 8 supreme substances, let that auspiciousness come here now. Let that auspiciousness bring happiness always. Om Sarva Ayurjnana Ratna Hamuki Brum 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 Hum 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 Swaha. By the sutra of this stack of auspiciousness, prayer as spoken by the Buddha, let there be this in life harmony, good fortune and prosperity. Let there be glorious merit and in future lives full enlightenment. Thus the Bhagavan spoke. The auspicious entourage, the gods and humans, the asura, all rejoiced at the words of the Bhagavan and praised the Tathagata. Then the youthful Manjushri requested the Bhagavan, this sutra of the Bhagavan, what is the procedure? How is it to be performed? The Bhagavan replied, the procedure is as follows. Recite it when building palaces for the 3 jewels, when building deity temples, main temples, stupas, shrines, when consecrating reliquaries, canons of the Buddha, collections of scripture, at places for the building of fortresses, when erecting new houses, at the birth of children, at the giving and receiving of brides, when taking out corpses, preparing the funeral site, and for repelling and transforming all inauspicious and bad omens. Recited to make food pure and of good taste, or for the 5 types of grains such as barley, rice, and sesame, and so forth, or for fruit, grain essences, honey, or the earth-shaped spirit torma. The benefits of doing so are that all unauspiciousness will be removed, and in this life there will be all that is auspicious, and the ultimate result will be gained. The auspiciousness of the enlightened form, the unborn Dharmakaya, the auspiciousness of enlightened speech, the ambrosia sound of the sacred Dharma, the auspiciousness of the enlightened mind, great equality free from error, the auspiciousness of enlightened qualities, lifting beings from the 6 realms, the auspiciousness of enlightened activity, spontaneously accomplished, free of effort. Let it be auspicious whether it be day, let it be auspicious whether it be night, let it be auspicious always, day and night. For you who move on 2 legs, let there be happiness. For you who move on 4 legs, let there be happiness. For all who are alive today, let there be happiness. May all gain the greatest happiness. Om Samskara Samskara Nirgadacha Om Swasti. The noble stack of Auspiciousness Sutra, together with all its ritual procedure, is complete.
That dream cheje ganzo lomni che ta de godu tsugorba odi gozu yoba indi ane chawa sangbo ta khandi chigi yoba ina te machebe kongdela ane kunjusum na kyapsu joya ane shengi tundu semke ya ta dini ko tsawa do chadi yore ta dichi du nga zu thanda gyuncha sumba gyore de ani kunjo jire ki do gyore di ta kunjo sumla kyapsu trowa da sing thambal tenche ani ta so sabe yin la so ro ji chadi yore.
Because today we are starting and beginning with our program or with what we're going to do, whatever activity one does, especially if it is a virtuous activity, if it is preceded by taking refuge and then doing it for the benefit of all sentient beings, or doing it motivated with the mind of bodhicitta, then it is particularly relevant and useful. And so that's why we did the first sutra, which was the common recollections, and then recollecting the qualities of the 3 jewels. So the first 2 sutras are indicative of refuge, taking refuge in a pure field of merit, and then generating the mind of bodhicitta in the presence of the pure field of merit.
Tadini chawadi lamlong yungda mayung dributun da matun sayadi nga du sonam la rale yore di indi ani sonam da demba chi gugu yorta ta sonam da demba chi gugu yoba indi ani ta chiri sonam yoba desam mayimba ta tanda nga zo misuka che sonam sardu soya di shing thambala tene sonam sa gugu yoba indi ani shing thambala tene sonam saya di yala dumba se je ta kandar 태고 준비 흉망보 나로니다 간다 송샤베 디레.
So when one engages in any activity, whether it will be successful, well, either like moving along will be successful, and whether one will have the result or not depends entirely on merit and how much merit one has. And so because one requires merit to do this, and make sure that one has a fruitful path and that the result will also arise. Over here, like is often spoken in Mahayana Sutras, in the presence of a perfect field of merit, you go through the 7 limbs, and so that's commonly how it's explained.
Tatana ngaju sangmadu zomje ani sangi tembala takandar thesam che dumba ani sangbuchi keje 좀되게 여바 인도 아니 주주 대신 셔버래 다하나 신기 아니 살네 셈바 춤보제 다하나 신기 다좀바 제주 하장지 다 투킴베 이시 응아딩에 장양 임베 인도 마공바 요마레 공지 식지 쇼고요래 디인도 아니 수수기 루이 몇번 나올라 다 간다 라마 야와 세드셔버 딘지 아니 doing namgala yu sambaji suzugi da kan signi shu yu sambaji suzu lui meba yang kan che chogre.
And so since we're starting and the wish that we have is to be able to understand and then to hear and then reflect on what will be taught and what will be learned, and that we can have a fruitful result, when we make this aspiration or this wish, there's the Buddhas of the 10 directions, and there's all the Bodhisattvas, and there's all the Arhats. So all the perfectly completed beings who have complete knowledge, perfected knowledge, they are sitting there, and there's nothing that they're not aware of. So the fact that we have generated this wish and that we have this wish is something that they're perfectly aware of, and they're sitting there and watching. They're aware of what's happening. So when you make an aspiration, you can also recollect that there are these perfect sublime beings with perfected qualities who are sitting there and they're completely aware of what we're doing.
Oda dindigi gyabu gishing dedala ani chanju matogyo pardo ani chiri chanju matogyo pardo ani yangu ta cherado ta ganda lomnye tar dinde tar chimba yungyaji barjema yungwa dindigi chedo ani 고숨 구베디니 차츠기 유연냐마시 당고 차츠에 연하체.
And so the first limb, the ones of prostration, then in this perfect field of merit that we have, that is sitting here around us, that is aware of what we're doing, then we aspire that they may guide us and protect us, give us refuge till ultimate enlightenment, but also in the immediacy, till we can bring our studies and our reflection to their termination. So we seek refuge, so the first one, refuge, in till we attain Buddhahood, and in the immediacy till we can complete this course of studies.
Tene niba di choba pyeche, da choba de la dabu songwa da masongwe chinang yungobo da ngazu pye shunginala sungu yorde da zowo di drubi choba di ani lunga yisum gewa lo kulche dindegi gewa khaan saashaba di ani chobe zesu meje ani shingtangba la pye di da choba chodo gyubashi da dhalen kiranzu sadarungu ni dus peje ani kulon sangbo ge ani dosi je da kandu chu drubegi dindegi cheje yungu yoba indu ani lunga yisumji gewa labushi saanangi yore o teda ani chobe zesu meje ani shingtangba la choba pyo nyame mebache.
Then the second one, which is offering, in the text it speaks of offering things that both belong to us and things that don't belong to us, and offering all things, everything from the internal and external world. But within all the objects of offering, the main one is one's own practice and one's own effort. And so with all the things that we do, with all the practice that we engage in with our body, speech and mind, we offer that. And so that is the ultimate practice when we offer that to the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas. And all of you have come from far, you've made an effort to be here, you have the motivation to do this, you are inspired. And so you have already, just in being here, you have accumulated a lot of merit. And so seeing that merit as the object of offering, then offer that merit to the merit field as the ultimate form of merit, as the ultimate form of offering.
Tene da somebody shagbe yana dire da shagwa se di ngar suzu rangi le marunga che shaba lunga yusung thone da minjiba da marunga kang che shaba dela gyoba geche and dipa gyurju tonje da leg bichola droyagi samudi shagwa so dire odi indu da nambaso those pay yundu ani samlu nanglo la 가장아주 휴분한 신시제 간달 Tada bardo ngazo kang che shabadi ani labu sheji dan tuen chumbo ji chung tu yo mare ta dindi chung me badi sem na gyoba de che ta thalin an dos zom che ani ta ganda sangi yu ani pe tima me ba dindi jigla an twesam pe tar chimba che ani ganda lu ngazo di lu chu sun roya teni chu lam du roya teni lam na parjime ba che tar 이시공도 제야 딘데기 삼로지케 규르조동에 삼로지케 요바 인디 안에 디 샤베 연라 차디 요래.
Then the next one, the next limb of confession, whatever activities or whatever actions we have done with our body, speech and mind that were not desirable or not helpful in making us happy or in bringing about genuine benefit, with some regret or some sort of remorse in what we have constantly been doing, then by transforming that or by understanding that and confessing it, then you transform it and you can move it in the right direction. So all of us who are here, we can think that we have tried a lot in the past, but that pure dharma that has been taught by the Buddha, if we have been unable to practice it or we have been unable to first understand it and then implement it perfectly, with some regret that we have not been able to do that, now change one's intention and motivation and drive to be able to ensure that the perfect immaculate dharma can be heard, understood, and that then we can transform it and utilize it. And so in that sense that we can make our minds enter into the dharma and that the dharma will then follow along the path, and that when we progress along the path will transform into wisdom. And so with then the third limb of confession, one can think of it, one can please think of it like that.
But then Jesu Irangi Yanadire. That Jesu Iran de la Rangi Givizawa, Jesu Irania, the Shengi Givizawa, Jesu Iranwa, Niga Yungure. Sonza da Shengi any Gewala, Jesu Iran Chesne, Shengi Shenla Migbiteche, Takanda Gewala Bushu Dubding, Kansa Shenla Migbiteche, Dinashi Rangi Chea, Nyabachi, Suzuki. Kulon sampo kya. Yang rangi ngar chesha bi gewa dunzola gawa gomje. Nge ngar susu ki yagu chesha ba di norme samba. An tanda pena kiranzo dus de zomba di zawangi ni norme nyambe semna gawa kya. Ani di gawa kya ba di ge mutwe che. Ani susu ki kang che ba di tar chimba che la yang ko tamja tembu yunga la pendo yore. Oti indi ani rangi gewa ngar sa shabata tanda sa shimba ta maungba sokbar gyuba mutu ji kari yoba di tamje la ani gawa gomye da ani shengi gewa la gawa gomji tetabu jesu lob nyabachi pena nga zu jambe bawu chidar kemba da kundu sangba teyan tishin teta kungi jesu da lob seche teta ki gewa la jesu iran ki yundi te jesu da lob nyabe sabachi ki yuduwa oti jesu iran re.
Then the next one, which is rejoicing, one rejoices in the virtue that has been accumulated by others and by oneself. And so when we talk about the virtue that others, or the virtues, the positive actions that have been done by others, one can see people who one is motivated by or aspires to be like, and then one can, the happiness or the joy that one feels in seeing the efforts of someone else, you can dedicate, you can rejoice in their actions, and you can use them as an example for oneself of how to try and progress along the path. And then with respect to rejoicing in one's own actions, when you look back and you see at what you have done and that you have done it in the right way, and you are certain that your actions were pure and that you have done something good, then you rejoice in one's own ability to have been able to do the right thing. And similarly, thinking about our decision to be here and that we are not in error in thinking that being here will be beneficial, rejoice in one's actions for being here. And so, by rejoicing in what one has done and the decisions that one has made and in the example that is set by others, when one feels motivated and inspired and happy because of that, then this helps to make the resolve that that one generates today stronger and something stable that will last till the end. So, like we recite in that verse, like the bodhisattvas of the past, Manjushri and Samantabhadra have engaged in these actions, may I also engage in those actions. It's that similar resolve, and you rejoice in the actions of others and oneself.
다디니 초유 콜로고 소와다 베드레 다 초유 콜로고 소와다 베세디 아니 디신셰버 초기 인수 아니 쉑데바 다 초기 인라 뒤다도 냐바샤데바 이네 심징기 되는도 아니 꾸이 넘버다 다민다게 토네 심징기 되는도 숭다민다 다 뒤절로다 삼베 초기 풍부다 메다마 융해게 된대지 용구여다 다 된대게 상계기 틀레 융해디 투사드 가올 투구여라나 심징 투구여래 심징 랑경원이 되냐면나 아니 상계기 코랑경원이 틀레 베멜후르도 중에 여바이나야 아니 심징이 되냐면바이나 아니 상계기 틀레도 중구여 말해 어디인데 아니 다다 뒤절라 ngaransu sowa tabe de tanda ina ngaransu semke tangi kondu shuba na shinge cholon shuba lo ke teni samba samba ke teni cholo dunya dumba ke an tösum gomsum dos mutuni chiege samba samba ke yoba yindu ani gyawan nam chugi ingsu mashuba cheje ani kusung tugi zabatile ani kandar dos cheje törona sege da kandar sem nang lol tanda ya ani tönye chingi kansa zo me yes 어디 인도 아니 추교 콜로 코로나 세지들이 소화다 베드레.
Then the next one where we request the turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddhas are always residing in the field of or in the state of equipoise, in a state of complete absorption in emptiness, in the field of dharmata. But from that state, they also arise with the aspect of a body or with speech. And the reason that they do that is solely for our benefit, and that is something that arises effortlessly, without any effort, from that state that the Buddhas always reside in. But the fact that this arises, or the Buddhas arise in that manner or not, is entirely dependent on us. Because if we do not have the desire, we have no wish for those things, or to receive the teachings, then even though the Buddha might be completely endowed with the ability to do it, it doesn't happen because there's nowhere for it to flow towards. And so with all the mind and the thinking that we have come about up till now, when we generate that mind, we request the Buddha to not remain solely in that state of equipoise, and reminding the Buddha that people who want to practice the Dharma, want to learn it, want to practice it, and want to attain the Dharma still exist. We request the Buddhas to continuously keep turning the wheel of Dharma.
냥을 믿어 소도베 세디 따탄도 슈브나시레 지점기 아니 심진기 감 나올라 따 지딘기 감 소소 강도 네게 요나 텔라 아니 심진기 응외네 데네 철로 둥이기 둠바 아니 야구치기 둠바 아니 퇴섬치기 둠바 지점 요바 대수역이 아니 겨원함 냥을 믿어 버치지 강도 지딘기 감들 아니 상기기 주바 강다 강 패되어 있네요 대다 냥을 믿어 버치지 슈객이 그 땜디디 디기 요래 다 철로 동예스게 매와체 안 딘데기 삼바 딘데기 경영기 강사 조침바이나 고 상기 지딘도 춤에 고 상기 주바 지딘도 패변 고바 조디 심진 철로 고여체도 임바인데 아니 철로 동예칭이 강사 마중바이나 아니 주바디에 뒤주기요래 베나딘데 도와 단다 슝지기 나올던데 송요래 ngedun tembe lama de sangyo gunju jubayins ta dala sangyo gunne las lejen khangsa yobesar so meba jungwa gyor teme lodan digjene tena shubwa megyo de tabi shingdu sheba gyor seje khanda diniji song yore lama pyogi lama jigi so da di tenda dada digdigi yore khandar sangi koran thangbo tukgyo yende simjingi tundu tukgyere bardo 손일 라베 카도 될라양 까와 창배부 줘야 돼양 심징이 좀 까와 제나 버래 탈 리붕어버도 상게지 추기 인수 아니 당아서 미니비 냥엘 되베 레데 에나양 주버 쳐버 차야 두스 페디고래 다디 심진 중얼라 심진 리리리 응외네 아니 간다 상게를 대바칭해다 셜을 대바칭해다 아니 상게 코란 쪽이 카드 제대로 두께버는 신기 눈바텔랑 알아서도 슈크데바지 요베이나 아니 계획이 간다 주버 지진이 감들도 조해매버지 패대지 고 춘이래 Dineshi Majumba Yina, and Tuba su due to go or what the into Tangarazo and those same gauge. Lomni shake Dumbaya again those pet of a diggy, Kanda Jidin come to the petting, and the Sanji Juba Jidin come to Shuela, Shiragi Pendo Yore, what the Digi Tone, and young mid of Saw Babas at the another sound.
Then the next one where we request the Buddhas not to return to nirvana or to remain. It's similar to before where we have the wish to practice, we have the wish to listen to the teachings, to contemplate on them, to meditate on them. If we have all of those wishes, then all the emanations that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas have put out, we request them to remain and not to go into nirvana yet. And by making this aspiration of requesting them to remain amongst us, we create auspicious circumstances to ensure that as long as we are making an effort, we have someone who will be there and can show us or lead us, guide us. And the reason for this is because the only purpose or the sole purpose of the Buddha's existing was for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so if the Buddhas are to remain, it is entirely dependent on our wish to be able to follow and do the things that they have said and done. For instance, there's one Tibetan Lama who says that from the very beginning, on the outset, when the Buddha generated the mind of bodhicitta, the aspiration, the wish to attain Buddhahood and loving kindness, it was directed or solely motivated by the benefit of other sentient beings. And the 3 incalculable aeons where they engaged in all of this hardship and actions, that was also solely for our benefit. And then the result that they attained, which was a state of complete Buddhahood, and everything that they have done from that state onwards is also solely for our benefit. And so, if we do not have the wish to do anything, then there is no purpose for the Buddhas to be there. And at that point, the Buddhas enter into nirvana. And so, anyone who has faith or you aspire to practice the teachings, then there is a reason for the Buddhas to remain and not just return into nirvana. And so by doing that, if we request them to remain, then their purpose for existing is fulfilled. It's natural that they will remain, that they will teach. And so by making this wish and asking them or supplicating them not to enter into nirvana, then we create a condition for us to continually have them. And so then, by doing that, we also have fulfilled this next limb.
Ta jungo dire dindegi da gewa khangsa shabe gewa de en jeri changju chumbo longoya dene tarbe gyulongoya dene sosogi ngosumgi gewa tarchimba dende longoya ani tanda labalomye ta drin ngazu gozugu yoba ide dendegi lomye tarchimba lo ngowa de ani ngowe yana chade.
And then the last one of dedication, where we dedicate, generally we dedicate for attaining Buddhahood, we dedicate for attaining liberation, we dedicate it so that all of our virtues, they may reach their final goal. And then because we're engaged in this activity, we also dedicate it so that our effort and our studies may reach their completion.
아니 조지 만에 아디샤기 장주 남기 좀 나올로 초바 넘버 두윤세지 디 둠보데라 초바 넘버 두윤세지 간다다 초베텔 지디 거래.
In George Atisha's Lamp for the Path, this 7 limb, he calls it the 7 offerings. He calls these, instead of calling them the 7 limbs, he calls these the 7 offerings.
Dire. 다 딘데게 싱 담발라 때는 쳐봐서 디기 싱기 툴라 땜바 디기 아니 소남기 초 어다 디기 아니 규체제 아니 가서 나랑서기 시규디 간다 아니 시규디 아니 최단 제보도 스코 용해라 디기 시라기 편도 좀 보여래 디인디 야라 둠바디 균데니 소소기 라렌 깨고 해시래.
And so the virtue that one attains through the power of the pure field of merit, in reliance on the pure field of merit, then acts as a cause for ensuring that our mind can be continuously absorbed or continuously surrounded by the Dharma. And so it's important to regularly do this 7 limb practice because it ensures that through the power of the perfect merit field, that our mind will constantly be familiar or involved with the Dharma, and that will then penetrate inside us.
Deje, da di indu, da dring anzo de tanda yala dumba duzu cheche, da gewa khaan sa shebe gewe zawa di, ani lu yudu che ne, ani dindi ki chebe zesu mi che da, tanda anzo mende dunga che, ani mende pyo yundu, ani anzo tanda dumba tubi wangbo, ngusu da di yundu shu yu, nyambe meba ki toa ne, ani anzo sazang duzu cheche, dumba tubi wangbo dunga khata pyo, ani mende chi pyo, 아니 수주 mellam dus gyoro naas ta kandar thalingi labalumgi dizam mayimba ani ko mise khangbo ani kandar chögi lambala dus troegi ani mellam shujin tabro naas shue.
And so then with this, having gone through the 7 limbs, the virtue that we all have, that each one individually has, taking that to be our object that we offer, so taking that as being our supreme offering, then we'll recite the mandala with the mandala offering, and then each one of us, then we'll offer a khatha to the statue of the Buddha. And I'd like to request you to, when you do this, and when you are making this offering, that you do keep in mind that we're making an offering not just for this, but we're making an offering so that within the course of our life we can actually understand the Dharma, and we can have it actually become part of us, and we can have it integrate into our mind. And so please make a strong aspiration as you will be doing this, so that this may arise. Do we have the mandala? No, do you know can you recite it? We'll recite it.
Okay.
No, we don't need that. Not that. We don't need that. Just reciting it. Just recite. Okay, we'll get that.
Lama dang gombo jizun jambe yang lan cha ze lo kange lo dun dim nye den de nye dara nam da rab ze Chenye dugu shishe seche Nye tokara leban Kanda sebe tsera mare Medon dongen geze Zhonzo gun lan boje daze Yen lan chuju yangde Zhodan chuzho nye mo nye long le ge cha zhon zhon ze Mari mi sen dong e nyo go chi nye chen ze ra je Dene da je sa ju ta zhen yen den lun zon ya zen tu be Chu zha chu dan chu nye yen de da lu mi zen jang bi yang lan du o ma ra ba za na di 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 Zenden gege jera vesen gen dalu demo memba rabze Kada denje shunlo toba ye lo dembo be nawa zendo zo kangen do zenye zo ne dawan tamje bambe Tambe chene tenze Godan telan changze lo Sanjen chedan sojen chona lan Chancho badon dane gyabso Dagin jinson jebe sona Yin cholan penche sanjen chubra Sanjen chedan sojen chona Chanjo bado dane gyabso Dage jinson jibe zona Drola benje sanjen drubara isho Sanjen chedan soje chona Chanjo bado dane gyabso Dagen jinson jebe sonan jin drola penje sanjin drubara sho. 당한주 달로기 롭젠 당부디 아니 두자세드레 다치르 두자 야가 랑가모 단다 로빈 쇼랑기 아니 세마군두다 랑제 데네마 아니 베치가 잡에게 자위 류다고 든지숨 쳐봐야나도 든지 시시 세마데데 어떤 진주의 나로라 아니 다양하게 남샤 탱규르기 남샤 아니 중하게 남샤 다다나 다나신게 아니 탱규다나 딘데기 조다 남샤 기부 친에다 슝나라 숭샤버디 아니 표현나로라 아니 로베 차바 chökyi senge 딘데 레 당고월라 아니 슝기 당기 숭샤기 조제든조 아니 레라부 친에 딴데와 체도 아니 수 간다 릴람디 수 뒤제 딘데 체지다 간다 차비지 제나부 체지 간다 뒤제세 등 아주 도신 중벌에.
So now when we start, the first subject, the first topic is, we translate it as the collected topics, which in Tibetan is Dudra. And the source of what we do over here, of what Dudra consists is in India. The first text was the Compendium of Valid Cognition, it's translated as, by Dignaga, Acharya Dignaga. And then Acharya Dharmakirti, he wrote 7 commentaries, or 7 texts on which were explaining Dignaga's root text. So the texts of Dignaga and Dharmakirti are considered the source of all logic and the topics that we discuss. And in these texts, they explain very extensively what a correct reason is, what an incorrect reason is, how do you then use consequences when you are discussing or debating with someone else to show inconsistencies in positions. And so he explained what correct consequences are and what incorrect consequences are. And so there is a very extensive presentation of how reasoning works that one finds in the texts of these Indian masters. And later in Tibet, there was a Tibetan master called Chapa Chökyi Senge, who, for a beginner to be able to have access to this wealth of information, which was difficult to understand straight away, he collected the topics from all of this literature in what is called the collected topics. So the source of Dudra is that, and those are the texts, and the way it has been collected is for someone who is a beginner to learn how to approach those texts and learn how to reason as one goes along. So that when we say Dudra, that's what it means. That's what the text is.
송자다 세마직비기 세미숑 된존나라 마송셰베 조제데 마츠 domkyon용도 아니 세마당 셰자 유의 유진 아니 찍다 타데 찌다 제라 되네 제단 독과 개와든 제와 아니 규든 제부 되네 아니 춘진시숨 세제간다 세미숑나라 유셰베 조자 독치지마 된샤바디 Chapa Chökyi Senge dusma tönna burjoja.
So then, if you were to kind of subsume or condense all the teachings that one finds in these texts, the text can be kind of summarized as an explanation of what valid cognition is, or what valid perception is, and the object of valid perception. So you're talking about cognition and the object of cognition. And then there's further ways in which there's divisions of things, which we will come across in the text, which is also in our English text. And we have divisions of things into definitions, definiendums, one, many, generalities and instances, isolate phenomena and substantial phenomena, related and contradictory. And so these are all the various divisions that Chapa Chökyi Senge made, and the subject matter is again from those texts, but they were kind of categorized in these little very neat categories for being able to have easy access to them.
Ta di nanglo ne ta tsema da yujing gi coordin zo nganju luri nangla jangya che luri gi khadula da tseme da tsema korda ani yujin to luri dyndu yaw sumdu yaw nisu yaw dinde gi namra mangbo thone nga semsim ju namsha sangma di luri kabla nga ju jangya che ta danda de ani sheja sena sheja da ani yugi namsha ta Dudra kapsu thangbo nga zo gozu ge di yugi namsha ga thone gozu yung gore ta yugi namsha ga thone gozu yung du ani sheja yu thela ani ngoboda ngome niche ani ngobo tela yan nangsege ba che yondu ani sug sheban dimidu jisum ani ta di nangsege sugla ba che yondu ani chisu de nangsu nis che ani chisu tela ba che yondu ani sugi yejene cheje kandar ani dai gejela sogo do cheje kandar geje ngat che ani su nangsege sugi gejela yan ba che yondu ani ibda khado 아니 카도라 파도 체윤데 아니 자베 카도다 야나 카도 세제 간다 두 세제 간다 아주 주제 나로라 주제 된저도 토라다 간다 두스 가조 롭존치기요래.
So the study of what perception is, what a valid mind is, what distinguishes perception from being valid or not, the divisions of perception, the divisions of mind, the winter mental factors, the threefold division, twofold division, sevenfold division is what one does in Lorik. That's not done right now, that's Lorik. Right now, Dudra focuses on the object of perception. And so the study of Dudra is the object of perception. It's often translated as object of knowledge. And the first division that we'll come across. So when we start studying about objects of knowledge, or what objects are, the way they're divided in Dudra, which will come up in the text, is they're divided into things that can perform functions and things that cannot. So they're classified as functional things and non-functional things. Then the functional things, or things that can perform functions, are further divided into form, consciousness, and then that what's called non-associated compositional factors. And then when we talk about form, it's divided into external form and internal form. And then external form gets divided into the 5 objects of perception, which are translated into the 5 sources. So we have form, smell, taste, touch, sound. And so the first topic that you start, when you start kind of getting access to Dudra, is you start with these external forms that are, which what we in English call our objects of the senses, so the sense objects.
Yeah.
So now we'll just follow along with the text. In English, we're going to be looking at, I hope all of you have it, it's the first volume of Science and, what's it called? Science and Philosophy in the Buddhist Classics. And we are going to be looking at it right now. It's on page 64, where it says Training in Logical Reasoning. Yeah? Okay?
Yeah.
Have you all found it? Everyone doesn't have the text? So we don't have much time. We'll just start. Even if you don't have the text right now, it's okay. It's just like an introductory thing right now. So just, it's okay. For those of you who do have it, maybe you can share with someone next to you.
Duzen Tamje la Shenlu Gawa da Ranglu Shaba Tela Zoba Bon Des, Gasha Ponsum Yogoni, Denla Paba, Chidru to the Yuji. Su Dini Rikolo Logibe, Talum Kichi Ins. Then you put it on Lomo watching the Rass to the Garo Roshisha. But Digi Tango, Paragraph Tango di Nangola, Dudenalo, Rilam Tang and the Rilam Jonzu di Nangola, Kechumbush in the young day, career Slavina. And Gasha Bonsum Seji. And Shenlu Gagwa, Ranglu Shagwa, Tela Zoba Bonwa, Sej, Sum Yungure.
So without having to like reread what the text says, you can already see that. If you notice over here, it says there's a threefold approach, and in most literature, you will find that things are presented in this threefold approach, which is a very important structure or format in which presentations are made. And it starts with refuting the position of others. Then it says positing one's own standpoint. And then the third one is rebutting the objections to one's position. So this threefold model of presenting the teachings is very important and is kind of, it's across the board. You'll find that texts are presented in this manner.
So that the Dudagi Tangi Kondushu Joja Namda Mango Jurova, Tinti Joja Kandishi Dana Paba Yina, did Tamjela, Mazurodan Disumbu Togotuni, Dugurta. Shengi to Sushi Yobatella, Nobatanji Pakayache. Tini, Ani Shengi de Pakache, and Rangula Dindishingus are say Rangluk Tawache, Matena Pavi. Taranglu Tawa di Shayun to tell a Kaji Zoba Yungurwa. Soba Yundugala, and Zoba di Pongo Yore, Tindigi Gasha Ponsumbo di, Madu Joja Tamjil dus Ken Drogorta, Parjinda, Uma, the Tema, the Shunkari, Deban and Joja Saman Bu, Shiji, Chinche, Dana Pabu Yor. Da Gasha Pons, Jayundu, Gasha Ponsum di condition Chagu Residu, Shinlu Gaya di Ributon and Gagu Yoba into Tangazo Rigua Piji Chagu Yore, so that Rigua Piji Dina Lola, Ani Rilam Piji Shea Dina Lola. Ani nganzo ta sewa chöjen senje da kandar disumbudi ani tungi yores.
So this model or this structure with this threefold approach of refuting someone's position, positing one's own, and then rebutting the objections that arise is something that we'll be following in each one of the topics that we do in Dudra. But it's not only limited to Dudra. This kind of structure of first taking on a position or analyzing someone else's position and finding what might not be consistent, and then by reasoning it out, then you come to posit your own position. And then your own position, when there will be people who will object to your own position or they'll provide reasons to show why your position is inadequate, then you need to respond to that. So this threefold structure, this model, extends to the study of all the topics in Dudra, but even later on, whatever we'll study, whether it is pramana or whether it is the stages of the path or it is madhyamaka, whatever gets studied is always studied in this. So this threefold model of refuting others, positing one's own position, and then replying to objections is something that is going to be done across the board. When you talk about refuting someone else's position on something, the way that you refute it is done through reasoning. And so you have to reason why another position is inadequate or incomplete. And in doing that, if you look at page 65, the second paragraph, the way in which you structure or you formulate a reason, which then is used to reason out why a position is accurate or inaccurate, is comprised of, I think in English, the easiest way that you can think of it is a syllogism. There's something which is you make a statement to try and prove someone wrong or correct, and that syllogism is always made up of a proof, the predicate, and the subject. So it has three parts. Whatever argument is structured in three parts. There's a proof or a reason that you're giving, there is a subject, and then there is a predicate. So all arguments will be structured with these three parts.
So that bena de la pedinish ko nando drashu ma cheba yimba ta takwa yimbi cher sechi ta bena shinlo ga yondu shinlo ga ba yindu shinlo ga ya de la bezön rab de la rangi ranglu gi thamja de la dami da ba yin sechi ta kansa shinji gi ane dami da ba mare takwa re sechi kelem ba yina ta lugdi ga gu gu yor ba so ta lugdi ga gu gu yor ba yindu tepa go yondu tela neba tendang di tangyur gi gun neba teng gu gu yor so tangyur gi gun neba teng gu gu yor ba yindu an tangyu phaya de la dra chu je ma che ba yin ba thal takwa yin bi cher se je nga zo tangyu di phang gi yor ta so za ta tangyu di phang yondu ta di nang lo la dra chu je se gi ta zui shi chu je se di zui shi chu je che ta mi da takwa da mi da ba khari yi me ge pa zösagi shidi chujin zöshi chujin da chujin setche ta macheba yimba thal sedi sewache macheba yimba thal sedi sewache ani takba yimbi chir sedi dache ta macheba yimba thal segi nöbadi parobola condition tangi yoreslana kerangi da takbar thamchagi duwas da takbar khelingi duwas takbar khelem ba yina an takbala ku tutado yo me ba chi ne gu gu yore yo me ba chi ne gu gu yore ani yo me ba chi ne gi yona gyujing gi cheba khandis ni rung gre gyujing gi cheba de rung marwa gindu tongu duwa gindu rugu duwas de indu gyujing gi ma cheba rebes ta thal se de chiwarita chiwatang yorda dashu majeba yimba thal da majeba ribes da keranta ba ina da majeba rubas singhe sorobsta gyumzen garijin lana kerangi takbar thamcha songa seje parubogi thamjadi takla kweje an kerangi dos seje takbar thamcheba ina an ngobe nisulo ko gyujingi chebaji redu ina kerangi thamchalu dil tebe ina ko majeba theru duwa sege ta thewa pyeji dinang lola ani dashu majeba yimba ta tabi shirsege ta chö tön sum sechi ligdwa ta di shenlu gaba khadule dusin rogu yore ta ranglu shabe khadu dela yan ta ju tön sum gi ton rogu yore di indi gasha bonsum di thamjela ta ju tön sum bu di khane rogu yore so da ta ju tön sum bu di gi jodan dela nga ju jiglam se gorta.
So if you look in the text, for those of you who don't have the text, if you follow, when you're talking about a syllogism, essentially you are talking about something that has these three. So there's a subject and there's a predicate and there is a reason. And there's different translations in English for each one of these. Everyone has their own way of doing it. If you look in the text, the example that's given in the text over here is take sound as the subject under investigation. It follows that it is not produced because according to you it is permanent. So that's the example that's been given over here. In this, sound is what we're calling the subject, but subject also means a basis of debate. That's another way that it's translated. It's a basis for debate. Over here, the predicate is that it is not produced, and the reason is that it is permanent. So identifying these three components, or these three components, is done on these three. What is happening over here, what this syllogism is doing, is it's actually a consequence. And what a consequence means, or what it does, is when you're trying to show someone that they are wrong, or that there is an inconsistency in what they think, then you provide this consequence. And what's happening over here is there is a position of someone who believes that sound is permanent. This is the position of the person over there. And so when you're trying to show that sound being permanent is not a viable option or is not possible, the way in which it is done is by showing them that the meaning of permanent is something that is unchanging and unaltering. If something is unchanging and unaltering by nature, it can't accommodate for its transformation due to causes. So something that is permanent, which has to have the nature of being unaltered and unaltering, cannot be produced by anything else because that would necessitate some sort of change. And so, if you accept that sound is permanent, and you understand that permanence cannot accommodate for production, then this is the kind of consequence that's given. So if you look at the wording, it says, take sound as a subject under investigation. It follows. So you learn and you become familiar with when you use the word follows, it's kind of inciting a response from somebody else. So it's almost like a question, where when you say it follows, firstly it's a consequence, and when you're asking them it follows, you're saying if you accept that it is permanent, then it would also imply that, or it would follow that it would have to be not produced. And so the opponent over here is someone who accepts sound to be produced and accepts sound to be permanent. To show them an inconsistency in how their position is wrong, a syllogism has been formulated here in the form of a consequence. And so what you'll notice is that whether you are refuting another position, you will have to have syllogisms which are structured with these three. There's always going to be a subject, a predicate, and a reason. And whether you are trying to prove your own position, so in the first part where you're refuting opposing positions, and in the second one where you're establishing your own, both of these are done through a syllogism. So when we say we learn how to reason, or when we say we're trying to learn reasoning before we have access to the texts, what it means to learn how to reason or to employ reasoning, or what we in English call Buddhist logic, is becoming familiar with how to use syllogisms and structure things with subjects, predicates, and reasons, and learn how to navigate material or whatever we're studying in this manner, with this tool. So if we learn and we're familiar with that and we can use this form of dialogue, then we have learned how to reason. So then when we're saying this is what we're trying to cultivate, just so that you know, this is what it means. To learn how to reason means gain familiarity and use reasons in removing wrong positions and establishing one's own.
Dire. Da dine tajo tusunda den riglam gi keje de she yunde riglam se ti na lo la ane tiwa tong da je da len gyap da je da ni yung gi yore. Da tiwa tang da de thanda shubu ne shi da ma che ba yin ba thal da wa yin be cher se tiwa tang gi yor ba so za da tiwa tong yunde tiwa tang dan di na lo la tang go tewa chi ku gu wa ma che ba yin ba thal se tewa chi ku yung du ane len gyang ye di len jangi digi ani len gyabdan khandes slaba ina kede macheba yimba rangi khelen la meba inarda macheba yimba rangi khelen du meba ina ani nganzu macheba yimba thal slayundi ti lendela chi chir se enju chi chir se di tisik imbi soroch kharichine lang soroch dra macheba yimba tha slayundi kharichine lang soroch sonza macheba yimba thal se di chi chir se gi sewa dela len gyabdan chik dela rangi deba mena kharichine macheba le se ji chi chir se len gyabdan chik ta dine macheba yimba rangi khelingi yoba ina an dachu macheba yimba tha se yundi de se ji de len gyabe chi sonza sewa dela len zabe sewa dela len gyabdan dela ani de len gya rangi deba yuna de len gyabe chi rangi deba mena phal rangja chiwa ta chi kharichine se chi chir se chi ta di ko mangche wala di tugre ta khashi la de la machine bache ani ya chi chir la matuba thesum sago ya rigdinde pena dingi shedir shasa yowa thal labaina de la machine ba tene chi chir la machine ba ko khanda thesum gne su gyoba yindi dendege sushi chojing gi tengdo sewa de yoda mela ani gonga gu niga la thesum ge gi shi ba ina ani lende la thesum saje dungi shidir chuji shasa yowa taasna thesum saje duksije khanda len gyobdan sum yungi yorda sewala.
So then when you're then engaging in, when you're using, so we've said reasoning means being able to use syllogisms. That's what reasoning is. So you're training and learning how to use syllogisms essentially. When you're using a syllogism, because you're going to be engaging in dialogue with someone else, there is a way in which you formulate them, and then there is a way in which you answer. So from the person who's asking, and then the responses that can be given to it. And so the person who's asking is someone who's just structuring any kind of argument with a subject, a predicate, a reason. That's what you have to learn how to do. When you're answering, with the example that's given in the text where the subject is sound, the predicate is not produced, there's different answers, there's different responses that can be given at each stage when you're talking about the predicate and when you're talking about the reason. So if the person, the challenger says, take the subject sound, it follows it is not produced. The defendant, if they agree or they disagree with whether sound is produced or not, they give different responses. So the first, it's in the text, the first response is why. And what why means, it's like you're further questioning, or you're putting forth a question to the challenger by saying, I don't agree with you, why are you saying it follows it is not produced? So one response, when you asked the predicate that you can give is why, which reflects your non-agreement with the statement that is being made. So if someone says take sound, it follows it is not produced, if the opponent doesn't accept that sound is not produced, then they say why. That's one answer. If the opponent accepts that sound is not produced, then they will say accept. So the other answer at the time of the predicate that the opponent or the defendant can give is why when they disagree, or accept if they agree. There's a third option, which is when both people are in doubt as to whether it is or not. So I think the best English example is if you say, in this room with your subject, it follows there is a ghost, which in Tibetan we translate as shasa, which I think some of you are familiar with. It's a flesh eater, but essentially it's a kind of being that we don't know whether it's there or not there. So if someone was to ask whether in this room there is a ghost or not, your subject is this room, and you're asking whether there is a ghost, if both people don't know, or they can't say that there is or there isn't, and so they find themselves neither being able to agree or disagree, then they respond by saying, I have doubt with respect to this. So at the time of the predicate, after the subject has been asked and the predicate has been stated, you can either, the defendant can only respond either accept with a why or with a doubt. I have doubt.
Tala Leng Gendan Shi and Shashora. But the several lane. Rere, Chidang the Sumura said, Shera. Tene Ta Dutch Macheba Yimba Tals, Chivata Macheba Yimbata, Gumzin Diredua, Sekita, Gumzish Kogruva. So the Gumzin de la Macheba Yimbichers. Namgi Yunde Yimbishers say, the other Gumzin Karikugina. Macheba Kellengue, Gumzin de la Tas, Gumzin Sewarwa. So that Macheba Yungue, Gumzin de la Karikugi in a Chiku Gurua, Nagudi Chiku and Gurua. Go Yundu, Ani Chigudi, Tadi, choosing it into Tugiminduna, Ani Lang of Danchik. Tadi choosing it into Tuguyoba Inaya, Gumzin Tetamla, Ani Di Yungue, never came at Ebajina, Ani Cabalot, Ani Cabamajun seg, Lang of Danchik. So Tadan Jenny, Languan de la, Ta Madrup Sag. Choosing it into Conquest Gumzin de Mindu Sagi, Ta Madrup Sag, Lanchik down. Choosing it into Gumzin de Yoba Inaya, didn't be Gumzin digi, and Macheba Yimba Tata love to Mindus, never came into Sag. Didn't de la Cabamajon Sageta, Leni Yosta.
And so this was up until the predicate. So there's a subject, it's being someone, the challenger is trying to prove that it is something, so they're asking whether it is the predicate or not, at which point the defendant can either say accept, why, or they are in doubt with respect to this. If they say why, or there's a doubt that they have, and so they're uncertain, then it's the challenger's job to provide a reason for showing why it is like that. So the why is it follows to incite a response, and the why that the defendant gives is then the next step, which requires the challenger to provide a reason as to why they are making such a claim. And so then the third part of the statement comes in, which is the reason. And the reason is whatever someone is using to prove something else. So in the case of the example we have, take sound, it is not produced. When the defendant replies with a why, then the challenger is going to have to provide a reason as to why they are saying it is not produced. And the reason can be anything. You can essentially give any reason. There's no fixed reason that you have to give. It depends on how you're thinking about it. So you can say it is not produced because it is permanent. It is not produced because it kind of travels through space, or it is a quality of space. Whatever you might come up with as a reason to justify your position is the reason. So that's the third part. Now, even when you give a reason, the defendant has an option to respond. And they can only respond with two responses. There's only two responses that are available to them. The first one is, in the text you find it says, I think the reason is not established. Is that how it's translated? I'll just look. That's the first one. Let me just read it exactly. Yeah. So the first one is, the reason is not established. And so what the reason is not established, like it says over here, it addresses the relationship between the subject and the reason. So if the reason that you give is not verifiable in relation to the subject, then the response that you give is that the reason is not established. If you can verify the reason on the subject or in relation to the subject, but just because you can observe such a reason, it doesn't necessitate or it doesn't entail that that predicate has to always also be there, then you say in the wording that is we find in our text is, then you say that there is no logical pervasion, or abbreviated, often you find there is no pervasion. And what that means is, even though the reason is something that I can attest to with relation to the subject, whenever I observe this reason or the existence of this reason doesn't necessitate that the predicate is also always there. So then you say there is no logical pervasion or there is no pervasion. So at the time of the reason being given, the challenger gives a reason to justify or prove what they're saying or what they're trying to establish. And at that point, the defendant can either say that the reason is not established, or they say that there is no logical pervasion.
So that Rilam City, that did it. Tanganzo Jodandi, Tambungel Jodandi, Tiwa Kandi, Tangba in a tela, Yimba Tul Seg, Sewa Yodebachi. Ani Paju Digi, Sewa Telapa Lentela, Nimado, that so near it was Yamena, de Yamena Chichir Seg, Lane, Jordan Nibuche. Then Ani Lane Nibu Yoba Indu, Yan Teda Jebe. 다 괴단 다지마 윤세마 괴용도 아니 임바탈 대임베 실세가 윤세마고 지화동이 되게 다 지화동이 되게 대마 괴용도 ያን 텔라바베 랭장이 되게 야면은 다마줍스 야면은 캬바마종세기 다 디조단 텔라 리글럼시기요레 다 딘디 리글럼디 자마간조 슝기 죄자 사와 카릴레바 이네 죄자디 상말라 Sulin Chetandi, Zoba Gabanda, Lane Gabandi, Dishisung Gitone, and Nazu Drogu, Telangazuda, Dujanala, so Labiadi, Mazilapti, Riglam said.
So this way of proceeding, this is reasoning. That's not that's it. What that means is that whatever we do when we're reasoning, whatever discussion is had, formulating a question has to be, one needs to learn. So when you're learning how to reason, you're learning this is what you learn. And so what that means is someone who is formulating a question has to learn how to formulate whatever question or doubt they have in this format. And so you make sure that there is a subject, you make sure that it is preceded with it follows that, and you make sure that there is a predicate. And then the person who's replying at that point replies with either that they accept or they do not accept. Primarily, these are the two responses. So, when someone asks, you have to ensure that whatever you're thinking can be formulated in this way where there's a subject and then you give a predicate. The person who's answering has to limit themselves to either saying that they accept or they don't. And then, whatever reason you think of or you conceive of, you have to cite it as a reason to support or to prove your earlier claim. And the person who's replying at the time of the reason again has to learn how to limit their responses to two. Either the reason is not established or there is no logical pervasion. Familiarize, first learning how to function in this way, both when you're asking, when you're inquiring, and when you're responding, is learning how to reason. And then using this structure or this method in everything that we study from now on is going to be the reasoning used in the study of further subjects. So when we do Dudra, our focus or our primary concern is learning how to reason. And once that has happened, then it is this very format. It's not like you leave this aside and move on to other studies. This same structure, this same tool, this same method of dialogue is then transported or extended to everything that is studied later on. So this is how we're going to proceed. And in Dudra, the focus is learning how to reason. Okay, that's it.
Jambe bao chedra kemba dang kundo zangbo deya dejende deda kungi jeso dalo gyawa deda damje rabdo ngo dusum shebe gyawa damje ngowa kangla chodo ngaba de dagi gewe zawa degun sangbo jeje rabdo ngowa ye